Hi, everyone. This is Eden of LightCycleAstrology.com. Happy Monday. Today, we are doing Mantic Monday, episode number 28, which is covering the astrology taking place this week between March 18th and 24th of 2024. So this week, wow, this week, there are so many things that we could talk about just as a separate video. And I wish that I could do a separate video for all of these, making content, 5 days a week. But with all of the different plates that I'm spinning in my life right now, that just isn't something I can do. Hopefully in the future, though, I'd like to get to that point where I do make content at least 2 or 3 times a week. And this is definitely one of those weeks where it really would be nice to cover a lot of the astrology from that method, because trying to pack what is coming for us this week into one video just won't quite do it justice. But I will do my best to try to cover the week. It is an incredibly dynamic week because we have planets ingressing into new signs. We have planets making really amazing, beneficial aspects to one another. We have planets emerging into visibility, a powerful indicator of the appearance of new things. And if I had to give the week just a summation or like a broad take on what it all may represent synthesized together, which is really hard to do. And sometimes you shouldn't synthesize everything that is happening into one narrative. But if I had to do that, I would say that it feels like a time where things are really, the soil is being turned over. You know what I mean? It's just like things are really shifting or hinging in new ways. We have the sun moving across the spring equinox degree, entering the sign of Aries. Anyway, let's jump right into it. Before we do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit notifications so you don't miss any videos. Drop some comments in the comment section. That helps the channel to grow, and I appreciate that. Plus, it's fun to see how you guys experience some of the things we talk about here. And you can always go to lightcycleastrology.com if you want to get a reading from me. Okay, let's jump right into it, and we'll pull up the real-time clock here, and we will get this week rolling. Okay, so I've got everything kind of down here at the bottom of the chart. By the way, I have the real-time clock set to London time, GMT time, just so everything is like centrally time-based. So you can convert things off of that. But Monday, the first thing that is really kind of the thing that we're going to notice astrologically is that Mercury is appearing or reappearing back into visibility into the sign of Aries. Now Mercury is emerging as an evening star. So that is by Monday, probably even before then over the weekend, or maybe even Friday, as far back as the end of last week. There may be those indicators, or there may be like signs or omens that things are becoming known in this particular way when planets emerge into visibility or reappear in the sky. It's usually that the natural significations that are associated with the archetype of that planet, in other words, what that planet archetypally represents, something about the nature of that planet tends to sort of appear or reappear in some manner that can affect things, and not in a causal way, but just in a symbolic way here. We're talking about the planet Mercury. So of course, this could be things associated with messages that all of a sudden appear. So that's one of the most basic interpretations, is that right around the time that Mercury appears back into visibility into the sky, we may see particular messages that we've been waiting for come across to us, or that's when we learn about something, or this is a time where we begin to think about something in a new way. So that's part of the astrology that's coming through for us right at the beginning of the week, is this appearance of Mercury as an evening star back into the sky. Okay, if we roll the real-time clock forward to Tuesday, we are beginning to see the formation of a Venus-Saturn conjunction, or in ancient language, they would have called it like an adherence, or you could think of it almost as kind of like a marriage between the two planets. And that is happening in the sign of Pisces, of course. Now, this doesn't perfect until Thursday, but we're using that traditional 3-degree range of engagement where Venus is within 3 degrees of Saturn. So we're beginning to see the marriage between these two planets. And of course, that is probably one of the most important and noticeable pieces of astrology for this week is definitely going to be that Venus-Saturn conjunction or adherence that forms in the sign of Pisces. If we go to Wednesday, the next day, we are going to get the sun ingressing into the sign of Aries. This is going to happen at 3:07 a.m. GMT London time. So this marks the spring equinox moment where the sun moves across one of the great turning points in the year. Of course, equinox represents equal night to the time of daylight. So we get 2 of these a year, of course. We get the autumnal or fall equinox, and we get the spring equinox. And this is also, by the standards of ancient astrology, a time when the sun was said to be in the sign of its exaltation. So the sun here is lifted up. And of course, one of the reasons for that is because this is the time of year where, from this point forward, all the way until the second equinox of the year, which is the autumn or fall equinox, there is more time that light is present in a 24-hour period of a day, right? So we get a time where even if there's just slightly more light happening beyond the spring equinox, that represents the light overcoming the darkness. So this is why the sun is lifted up and exalted, because it's seen as the sun being kind of like a hero that is able to slay the darkness of winter, or like the evil dragon or something like that. This is the sun representing the hero and being victorious and things turning over. Of course, Aries is a cardinal sign. And that word cardinal is associated with the turning of a season, or the turning of a hinge, where something is one thing and then really shifts or pivots into something new. So, and there's a lot of just symbolic message that is really speaking very loudly to us, with not just the sun entering Aries, but with a lot of the planets that are going through their movements right now in the sky. Okay, and then if we jump to Saturday here, we get just real quick, Thursday, we're going to get the perfection of the Venus-Saturn marriage or conjunction in Pisces there. But if we go to Saturday, a few days later, we are going to get Mars entering Pisces. And so we got a lot of planets now in Pisces after Saturday. We got Mars, we got Venus, Saturn, and Neptune. So this is really interesting because, we have this Pisces stellium, and we 2 malefic planets are in Pisces. So that's kind of interesting, right? The malefics of Saturn and Mars are both co-present in the same sign. So that's kind of interesting. But we also have Venus in there, one of the benefics. And on Sunday, Venus will begin to form a sextile with Jupiter. So this is really interesting because we have both benefics in Pisces, but we also have this really strong support among the benefics. So malefics are kind of getting together and benefics are getting together. So there's real strong, compatibility both with, when we say malefics, we're talking about the planets that we're not saying that they're bad, like they're bad planets. We're saying that they represent those things in life that are, thought of as not good things, right? The whole spectrum of shit show that can come in life needed to be represented by some of the tarot cards, as it were, or in the case of mantic astrology, some of the the planets. There needed to be planets that could represent bad things that could happen, and those were held by Mars and Saturn. Not that they're all bad or that's the only thing that they can represent, but that is one of their roles in the mantic divination of astrology, is to represent those things that are shitty, as it were. But now Venus and Jupiter, of course, are going to be the planets that represent the things that we would desire or want, or the things that come to us that are fortunate or something like that. So very interesting. By the end of the week, we have really powerful co-presence with both of the malefics, and we have really strong support. We have an exalted Venus making a degree-based aspect to her sign ruler, Jupiter, also a benefic. Jupiter in a mutual reception with Venus as well. So really powerful contacts between benefics and shared territory with malefics. So very, very dynamic. So of course, this is a lot of stuff, right? This is everything from big changeover to equinoxes and emergences of planets, and very strong coherence between malefics and benefics. All kinds of stuff is really turning the soil over, as it were. Let's get into some of the archetypal things, or ways in which we might see the archetypal symbolism appearing or manifesting in whatever ways that the gods are speaking to us right now, whether that's things that we notice or experience out there around us, whether that's things that we notice or experience inside of us, whether that's things that are even just happening and we get grabbed or possessed by the nature of the times. We can also react, of course, to things before we even realize how or why we're reacting to something. And I think there could be a lot of that this week as well, because we have a lot of fiery energy with Mercury in Aries emerging, with the sun entering Aries and becoming exalted in this very Marsy place. All sorts of things is sort of pointing to more of a reactionist or off the cuff kind of mode of doing things at times. So let's jump into the ways that feel to me like they're kind of emblematic of the time this week. So the first of those is going to be a fiery message that gets delivered, and not holding back with what you think. When we think about Mercury emerging as an evening star, that's really interesting because evening stars were thought to be a bit more feminine, or connected to social things, because the feminine or nocturnal energy tends to be more Venus-like. It tends to be about the harmonization of things around us or people around us, and things like that. So you get Mercury emerging as an evening star in the sign of Aries, a very masculine, fiery sign. That's like where you find yourself in social situations, and there's the off the cuff kind of remark or what you think. There's no filter. You just say what you think. And when you have Mercury emerging into visibility in this sign, that's really interesting because it may indicate that there is kind of this real fiery thing that may have been gestating inside, and it's like this is the moment where you just don't hold back and you just say what you think. And it may have the power, this is the thing that I really wanted to say, it may have the power to turn things like a hinge or like a door, because this is a cardinal sign and a springtime, the beginning of the springtime months. So Aries is such a powerful sign because it has so much vital new energy, powerful, a force of nature that comes through and revamps the world into newness, brings life anew. That heat and solar energy is so powerful in this sign. And so when you get Mercury emerging, there's something like a power for communications to be had that have the power to really turn things over into a new direction, or a way in which competition begets victory or something like that. But of course, this is definitely not the time where you're necessarily maybe carefully thinking about how to get your point across. This is a time where you just react, and before you know it, you're saying something that you've long been thinking and it needs to come out. But where there is the bravery to say something, there may not be the tact to, attack or concern about whether that's going to really change things in a really potent or powerful way. So there's a lot of power to change something here when these messages are emerging right now in the sign of Aries. But Mercury emerging into the sign of Aries might also represent learning something new, right? This is a very springtime inceptional energy. So you wonder about a time where there's just a general signification of learning something like knife skills in the kitchen, or maybe learning or taking action on how to file an LLC for a business that you've been wanting to really get going, or something like that. Let's see what else. Let me refer to my notes here because I had a bunch of these. Yeah. You could see, I mean, these are just kind of like throwaway examples, but you could see somebody beginning to take on the learning of a defensive martial art, something like that. That's an interesting one because they have these classes where at times, especially if you're in vulnerable places, or you have to leave your office at night or something like that, and you have to make it to your car or onto the subway or something like that. This can be one of those times where you begin to understand, or you begin to take matters into your own hand, where you're feeling like, I need to defend myself in some way or take some defensive measures. That can be something that is cropping up right now as there's a need, or there's a impulse to be like, I need to defend or define something very strongly right now. And so that could take the form of like physical defense or something like that, or it may be verbal or something like that, speaking out against a bully, or anything like that has that kind of defensive quality or martial kind of quality. So joining a defensive class where you learn how to get away from somebody or something like that in a dark alley, as it were, anything Marsy like that. So that's one thing that this also could represent. Um, yeah. Okay. Now, for number 3 here, this is bringing in the very powerful conjunction between Venus and Saturn. This is, usually when we think about Venus and Saturn, our hairs begin to, we begin to think, oh boy, here it comes, Venus and Saturn, that can't be good, right? We're talking about the planet of love, and we're talking about Saturn, which everybody usually has a fearful kind of reaction with. And at times, rightly so, right? These are two planets that, when they get together, sometimes can indicate that there's trouble in the marriage, or there's trouble in paradise, or something like that. But when you have a Venus that is exalted, Venus in the sign of Pisces here, when you have Venus exalted, passing over Saturn here, that for me gives you a more of a positive indicator for Saturn, even though Saturn can tend to represent things like separations or alienation or suffering or fear or something like that. It can represent those things, of course, but Saturn is a very dynamic planet. Saturn can also represent things like duty, things like responsibility or hard work. And when I think of Saturn and Venus coming together, when Venus is exalted in really good dignity, lifted up, it feels to me like it's more of one of those positive forms of something like desire and duty that go hand in hand. When you get something and you really want it, like it could be anything. Like for me, I've always wanted to have a BMW like 320i or something. I'm not usually a person that really is materialistic, and I really want these very specific things. But when I was younger, I rode in my friend's BMW that he was leasing. He was a very successful salesman, and I just never forgot how amazing that car was. The way that the car would lower itself at the push of a button, the suspension would go down, the lights in the car. My friend telling me that even there was computer processing in the car that would like anti-muffler noise or something. Anyway, it just was very impressive to me. And I don't think I'm getting a BMW this week, but this is like one of those things where there may be one of the ways this may appear or manifest for people out there is perhaps yourself, is getting something that you really desire, something that's really a strong thing that you've held, maybe even Saturn represents something that is been a desire that is long lasting. And all of a sudden, Mercury and Saturn come together, Venus is exalted, and maybe you're granted kind of like this desire that is really powerful or potent, or that you've held for a long time. But with Saturn in the mix, you have to wonder, when you get something that you want, the things that you possess you. They take work, they take duty, they take responsibility. Now, these two planets coming together into the form of a marriage in Jupiter sign is also really interesting, because you get the word union in there, I think, because Jupiter is a planet associated with union, or things that are held together almost like a glue, like in the form of faith or religion or the courts, all Jupiter-related symbolism, right? So you get this really powerful symbolism around desire and responsibility, or desire and commitment, or duty and love, and all of these things coming together. So one of the things that the example things that I came up with is like like if you decide to go to like marriage or like couples counseling, this could be an example where you get all of the significations of exalted Venus conjoining Saturn in Jupiter's sign. It's like there's something that needs order. There's something that takes work, but it's for a good thing in your life, right? It's for love or relationship or the things that we desire that we deserve or anything Venus like that. But it's like you're sort of combining that there needs to be a sense of mediation, union, order, cohesiveness around the things that you want and the work that it takes to have those things. So, of course, we could see, proposals for marriage, like actual proposals for marriage. This would be a really big time where I would think that you might see people getting engaged or married or, but marriages take a lot of work. So this could, if you're already married or you're already in a long-term relationship, this could be a time where you want to strengthen your relationship in some way by maybe going to see a counselor or something like that. So all of those things sort of come in, I think, as themes. Another example could be, I have here in my notes that I'm reading, is maybe for some of us, this is a time when we begin to strongly feel that we're ready to begin a family. But of course, again, getting ready for a family is a lot of work. It's a lot of responsibility. It's going to take a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears. But these are just a couple of quick examples for this. There, of course, are going to be many more, but that is the third thing that is more of a theme this week, I think, is desire, duty, or love and work, commitment, union. All of these things are sort of kind of circling around right now. Okay, and then number 4 is going to be about the sun ingressing into Aries and the time of year where light is overcoming darkness and is victorious over that darkness. I really wanted to make a video just on this, but I didn't want to leave out the other things that were happening. But this one really is such a powerful thing that we experience seasonally, one time a year, where we get this positive change into light out of the dark winter. And so when we think about that, we can definitely get into the philosophical topic about what does light and darkness represent, since we're talking about light overcoming or overpowering darkness. Light and darkness are powerful axiomatic things that we can find or take meaning in, of course. So we can use light and darkness as a symbolic holder for a great many things. And I have a simple list of some of the ways that we do this. So for instance, light can represent life and darkness can represent death. And that's probably the most fundamental, symbolic axiomatic pair that we get when we're talking about light and dark. It's life and death, right? But a couple of these other axiomatic pairings or dualities is good and evil, right? Future and past is also a big one here, especially when we're talking about the sun going into Aries. And now the darkness or the winter sort of represents something that was, and that that time of year where we get the life reappearing in the world on the plants and in the animal kingdom and stuff like that, definitely coincides with kind of what's to come or the future that is, beginning to form at that moment. You can also have victory and defeat, where darkness can represent something that has been defeated and overcome. And light, of course, can represent the thing that is overcoming that thing. You also get newness and the status quo, kind of similar to, well, very similar to future and past, but the status quo can represent that sort of institution, like in an institutional way, where there's something that is that monolithic thing, and both Saturn signs, Capricorn and Aquarius, Saturn ruled signs, are in the winter time. So you get that kind of world domineering or overarching controlling entity, like a government or something of that nature that has always been. It's like an edifice. It's like a permanent feature in the landscape, right? Like a banking institution or what have you. That can darkness can represent things in the world like that. And when I say newness for what light can represent in that axiomatic pair, is that there can be something that is seen as a changing over of the guard, right? Where this institution that has always been there and is like monolithic is somehow there's a changing of the guard, maybe just within the people that work in that institution or what have you. But that can also be ways in which we symbolically relate to light and darkness. Another way is eternality and impermanence. And you get the sun or light representing something that is like some kind of eternal wisdom or truth. And this is because the sun's face is always unchanging, right? The sun does change in terms of like it rises or sets at different times, but the sun tends to represent, and light tends to represent, things that are working in the higher divine, eternal or immortal sense. Like an immortal wisdom or an immortal myth that travels through time or something like that, or light being a representative of things that have always been and will always be and are somehow connected to God or the higher realm of creation or the cosmos or something like that. And in this pairing, we get the darkness representing the ways that nature is always fluctuating and changing, going through the impermanence of, especially on the material side of things, where you might get that BMW, but in 15 years, guess what? That beautiful new car is no longer beautiful and new, right? It's decaying. So you get kind of light representing something that is immortal, eternal, divine, and you get darkness representing decay, death, something like that. So you get these very powerful symbols each year when the sun enters Aries of moving towards or returning to a divine order and leaving behind a place of decay or impermanence in some way, moving towards something that is meaningful and powerful, that is closer to like a divine sense of God, or just things that are more of a higher realm somehow. And then you get, of course, one of the big ones, I love this one, is light representing the known and darkness, of course, representing the unknown or the mystery. That's a big one. And so in that sense, darkness can be associated with fear. So could this be a time where we overcome fear? Aries is a sign very associated with bravery, right? Mars ruled, the warrior that goes out and does battle and is putting his life on the line to procure something, fight for something, right? We get the iconography of the ram for the sign of Aries, and the ram in the springtime, fighting for mating rights. Well, if the ram, whichever ram wins that fight with the other ram, is going to procure those mating rights and as a consequence, pass on his genetic line, whereas the ram that is has failed may not get to mate, may not get to pass on his genetic heritage to the future generations. So we get the courage that comes along with this axiomatic pair of the known and the darkness and fear, anxiety, a time where there's bravery and we step into what we know. We're brave. We overcome the fear. We overcome the unknown. We step into that territory and have the courage to do so. So that's also a strong symbolic thing that is represented with light and darkness, especially at the time of the year where we get the sun in Aries. And lastly, we have heroic exertion on one side of things, on the light side of things, and darkness representing kind of that inward gestational process. So you get kind of like, this is the sun representing the rah out there, getting what's yours in a kind of heroic fashion, being, exerting a lot of force and will and effort. And darkness representing as the sort of axiomatic opposite of that, the inward gestational time where you think about something, where you process something. So are we moving out of that gestational period into a more action-based exertional period? Right. So that is what you could say about light and dark. As it pertains to the symbolic ways that we we're not even aware so much of how we associate things around us with light and dark, but it's one of the most powerful axiomatic duality pairs that we do unconsciously or consciously associate with reality. Of course, is very fundamental to philosophy, especially when it comes to astrology, because the ancient astrologers were very aware of these philosophical, metaphorical principles of symbolism, light and dark being one of the most powerful ones of those. And so we're entering a time of year where that is on the stage. That's a very prominent theme, is to be walking out of darkness into light. So it's also a big part of this week. So hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks so much, everybody, for watching. I hope you guys have a great week. And let me know in the comments anything you thought about this, any ways in which you see the gods speaking to you right now, or ways in which they're manifesting things in your life. And we will be back next week with another Mantic Monday episode. And we'll be taking a look at, I think, Venus's sextile with Jupiter, which is building this week, but is perfecting at the beginning of next week. So that is going to be, I think, a good aspect to get into. Have a great week, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.